sidewalk, his eyes hopeful for some kindness. A sleek bicycle stopped beside him, and a young woman quickly stepped off. She placed a small kitten and a tin of milk next to him, then hurried off without a word. The old man, puzzled and a bit annoyed, called out, "What's this? Do you think I'm here to collect stray animals?" Despite his initial frustration, he felt pity for the shivering kitten. Deciding to take care of it, he shared his small portion of bread with it that night. As he untied the kitten from the spot, it started meowing loudly and ran off. Curious, he followed it through alleys until it led him to a well-kept house. He found the young woman crying, a letter in her hands. The sight of the kitten made her sob harder. "Why did you bring it back?" she cried. The man asked her why she was so upset. She explained that she was terminally ill and didn't want her sadness to affect the kitten. "I couldn't bear leaving her alone, but I couldn't keep her either." Understanding her plight, the old man said, "She came back because she needs you as much as you need her. No one should face hard times by themselves." The woman, moved by his words, offered him a young pickpocket named Tom devised a plan to rob a small bookshop owned by an elderly gentleman, Mr. Collins. Tom's strategy was clear. Once the shop closed, he would break in, threaten Mr. Collins, and steal the day's earnings. However, as Tom lingered near the shop, Mr. Collins spotted him, mistaking him for a customer in need. Inviting him inside, Mr. Collins offered Tom a warm cup of tea and shared stories of his youth and the books that had shaped his life. Tom, who had never experienced such warmth, felt a pang of guilt. As he left, Mr. Collins handed him a novel, encouraging him to come back if he ever needed more. That night, unable to shake the kindness he'd been shown, Tom decided against his plan. The next day, news reports revealed that Tom was wanted for a series of thefts, with a significant reward for his capture. Mr. Collins saw this, but chose to see the good in the boy he met. Tom returned to the shop, intent on returning the stolen wallets he'd accumulated over the weeks. Just as he arrived, the police came by, inquiring about any suspicious activity. Mr. Collins covered for Tom, giving him a moment to slip away. Instead of running, Tom stepped forward, handing over the wallets to the police, ready to face the consequences. Overwhelmed by Mr. Collins's faith in him, he cooperated fully with the authorities. Thanks to his good behavior and cooperation, Tom was released from detention early. Years later, Tom, now reformed and successful, returned to find Mr. Collins had passed away. With the money he had saved, Tom bought the bookshop, continuing Mr. Collins's legacy, promoting literacy and change. Remember, it's never too late to change the story of your life. If you were moved by this story, feel free to share it with others. Mrs. Thompson called her 3 daughters together. "I'm taking a retreat to reflect and write," she announced. "Before I leave, I will give each of you a gift. Use it wisely. I'll be back soon." The daughters were curious, knowing their mother was not one to distribute her wealth lightly. The eldest daughter, Jane, opened her gift and discovered $5,000. "Is this it?" she muttered, clearly upset. "I expected more." Shrugging off her disappointment, Jane took off on a luxury cruise, splurging on all the extras, and returned with nothing but memories. The middle daughter, Emily, also received $5,000. "Awesome! Time for a shopping spree," she exclaimed. Emily spent her days at upscale boutiques and nights at fancy restaurants, enjoying the high life until the money ran out, leaving her with a closet full of fashion and an empty bank account. The youngest daughter, Lucy, found just $2,500 in her gift. "It's less than my sisters received," she thought, "but it's enough to start some." With a clear plan, Lucy bought supplies and started a small craft business online. She worked hard, reinvesting her profits to grow her offerings. Over time, her little shop gained a loyal following and her earnings multiplied. Years later, Mrs. Thompson returned and asked her daughters about the gifts. Jane and Emily had fun stories, but nothing to show for their money. Lucy, however, led her mother to her now thriving business. "I started with your gift, and look what it has become," she beamed. Mrs. Thompson hugged her youngest daughter. "The doctor told me I have limited time left," she said softly. "I wanted to see who could use their resources wisely. Lucy, you've shown great prudence and creativity. You are worthy to inherit my legacy." were sitting on the school steps sharing a bag of chips when a new kid walked up to them. "Hey, kid. By the way?" "You. Yeah, I think he's pretty cool. I might hang out with him." "Go for it, man." Over the next few weeks, Mike found himself thinking about inviting Tom to join their group, but he was too shy to ask. Then one afternoon, he saw Chris laughing and walking into the cinema with Tom. Mike felt betrayed and hurt. He said he didn't like him. Mike muttered to himself angrily. Unable to control his jealousy, Mike concocted a drastic plan. "If I can't have Tom as a friend, no one will," he thought bitterly. The next day, while Chris was getting snacks during their study session, Mike tampered with Chris's phone, sending mean messages to Tom from it. When Chris returned, Mike played it cool. "Hey, I ran into Tom at the store. He mentioned he's been feeling left out. Thought you should know." Chris looked puzzled, but shrugged it off. Just then, Tom stormed in, holding up his phone with the messages on display. "What's this about, Chris?" Before Chris could react, Mike intervened. "Wait, Tom, those aren't from him." He grabbed the phone and deleted the messages. "Someone must have played a prank." Tom and Chris looked relieved. Mike felt a pang of guilt watching them reconcile, realizing how close he'd come to ruining everything. "I'm sorry, guys," he admitted, coming clean about his actions. Shocked but forgiving, Chris and Tom decided to give Mike another chance, knowing everyone makes mistakes out of jealousy. They all learned the importance of trust and the value of a true friendship. A boy named Tom, whose childhood friend Mike moved across the country. Mike and Tom stayed in touch initially, but Mike's responses started to dwindle as time passed. For Tom's birthday, he was excited because Mike promised to visit. However, on the morning of his celebration, Tom received a text from Mike, apologizing that he couldn't make it due to a last-minute family commitment. Tom was crushed and shed tears alone in his room. His sister, seeing him so upset, decided to lift his spirits. "Let's go out and celebrate your 16th birthday in style," she suggested, taking him to a new gaming arcade he hadn't visited. The laugh broken, Tom rushed outside, his sister hurrying after him to provide comfort. "Why doesn't he reply to my texts? We used to talk all the time, and now he's just ghosting me," Tom lamented, feeling abandoned. His sister embraced him and said, "Sometimes the best thing we can do is to let people move on their own path. It's hard, but it's also a part of growing up. When you stop holding on to those who are drifting away, you open up space in your life for others who truly value you." At that moment, Tom realized that part of friendship is knowing when to let go, and that sometimes loving someone means giving them the freedom to grow apart. At school and complained every morning. I argued with my teachers, skipped classes, and didn't do my homework, even though I had all the resources I needed. One afternoon on my way from school, I saw some kids in torn uniforms picking up trash. I shrugged it off thinking, better them than me, and hurried on. At home, I threw my backpack in the corner and yelled, "I'm sick of studying! I want to play video games all day!" And I stormed to my room, slamming the door. The next morning, my mother woke me up early, packed a small bag for me, and drove me to a rural community center. "You'll volunteer here," she said, and left before I could protest. The coordinator was strict. "Start sorting these donations," he instructed firmly. I spent the entire day organizing old books and cleaning up. No breaks, just constant work. The center was bare bones with no comforts, and I was overwhelmed by how much there was to do. Each task was more demanding than the last, from tutoring younger kids with few supplies to helping serve food to families who came in hungry. After 3 days, my mother returned. As I got into the car, I broke down in tears, realizing how good I had it with my education and home. It's true, you often don't realize what you have until you see life without it. Often late to her morning shifts at the cafe, her eyes one morning. "This is unacceptable. It's disrupting our service." Her colleagues exchanged worried glances as she apologized meekly, promising to try harder. Her manager, puzzled by her consistent lateness, decided to follow her after her shift ended. Instead of going home, she headed straight to a local school, where she picked up 2 young children. They made a quick stop at a nearby park, where she carefully watched them play, looking exhausted but attentive. Later, they walked to a small, modest house. The manager approached a neighbor who was outside watering plants and asked about the young woman's situation. The neighbor revealed She's raising her siblings alone since their parents passed away last year. She works multiple jobs to keep up with the bills and their schooling. Feeling a profound sense of empathy, the manager left and thought deeply about how to help. The next day, as the young woman hurried into work, late again, the manager pulled her aside. Instead of reprimanding her, he handed her an envelope containing a raise in pay and a schedule adjustment to better suit her needs. As she opened the envelope, tears welled up in her eyes. The staff, who had overheard the neighbor's story the day before, surprised her with a small fund they had collected to help with her home expenses. Overwhelmed by their kindness, she hugged each of them, grateful for their support in her challenge. A catastrophic earthquake, a survival so miraculous that the rescue team was astounded. When the leader of the rescue team met her, he exclaimed, "It's almost impossible to find anyone alive under such rubble," and documented her case for further study. The following day, her story inspired a group of frightened survivors trapped in another collapsed building. Days later, all those survivors were rescued unharmed. Acknowledging her inspiring role, the woman decided to volunteer with the rescue teams, offering hope and courage to those still trapped. Weeks went by, and the rescue operations coordinator grew worried. "You must rest," he urged. "This strain is too much for anyone," but the woman was determined. Once, a mother pleaded with her to comfort her trapped daughter. Facing the young girl, she gently said, "I can't give up. I must bring her hope." While recuperating from exhaustion, she asked softly, "How many did I inspire?" The coordinator replied, "You gave hope to 20 souls." Tears welled up as she murmured, "Was it enough? Did I do enough?" A peaceful voice responded, "It was more than enough, my dear. Now, find your peace." Lady drove up in a shiny new car. The lady stopped, chatted briefly with the girl, and bought all the lemonade for $15. Thrilled, the girl then headed to a nearby bookstore because she loved reading. However, the prices were high, and her $15 wasn't enough for the book she wanted. The kind lady, who had noticed the girl's disappointment, stepped out of her car and followed her into the bookstore. After a short talk with the owner, she walked out. Moments later, the bookstore owner displayed a sign that said, "Today only. All books $15. The handed over her $15 with a big smile and left the store clutching her new book. As soon as she disappeared from view, the bookstore owner took down the sign and returned the prices to normal. The elderly lady's generosity didn't just extend to buying all the lemonade. She'd also ensured the girl could get the book she really wanted. Found a note from her school in her backpack about the upcoming career day, where students' parents were invited to share about their jobs. Sarah was anxious because her mother was a cafeteria worker at a nearby hospital, a job Sarah thought her classmates might find uninteresting. Fearing ridicule, she hid the note under her bed. On the day of the event, many parents arrived in formal attire, discussing their roles as doctors, lawyers, and engineers. Suddenly, Sarah's mother appeared in her simple white uniform. Sarah felt a wave of panic, worrying that her classmates would mock her. Her mother confidently took the front and began to talk about her day-to-day duties, the importance of nutrition, and how she ensures that all patients receive healthy meals tailored to their medical needs. She shared stories of interacting with patients and the joy of helping them recover through nutritional care. As her mother spoke, Sarah noticed her classmates were genuinely engaged, asking questions about dietary plans and the challenges of feeding hundreds of patients. They respected her mother's dedication and the impact of her work. Sarah's embarrassment transformed into admiration and pride for her mother's crucial role in healthcare. When her mother finished and started to leave, Sarah rushed to hug her. apologizing for her earlier fears. Her mother just hugged her back and whispered, "I love you, sweetie. Remember, it's not the job, but how you do it." Of her mother. Urban neighborhood, a young boy named Timmy was playing in his living room late one evening. As he assembled his toy blocks, he heard the window slide open with a gentle hiss. Feeling uneasy, he tiptoed toward the living room window to investigate. As he peeked out, he spotted a figure climbing into the yard carrying a flashlight. Panicking, he quickly dialed the police on his family's landline. Grabbing his baseball bat, Timmy crept toward the window. The intruder, noticing the slight movement inside, shone the flashlight toward the window. Timmy ducked, clutching the bat tightly, unsure of what to do next. Just then, the police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached. The intruder looked startled and muttered, "Oh no, not again!" As the police lights flashed through the window, the intruder held up his hands and exclaimed, "Wait, this is my house! I lost my keys and didn't want to wake my family!" As Timmy stepped out from behind the curtains, bat in hand, he shouted, "Dad, you scared me!" His father, embarrassed, laughed nervously. "Sorry, buddy, I should have called." The police, now at the door, were confused, but relieved there was no real threat. They advised Timmy's dad to keep a spare key somewhere safe next time. Timmy decided maybe next time he'd just play closer to his parents' room.